Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottawar and I'll be taking up daily news analysis of The Hindu and Indian Express. We'll discuss 5 most important articles from these two newspapers in a comprehensive manner. The first article mentioned on page number 12 of The Hindu, it talks about State Election Commission. We are observing a trend in which state governments are trying to disempower State Election Commission. So we will understand the constitutional status of this body and the powers and what is exactly happening right now. The second article mentioned on page number 1 of Indian Express, it talks about semiconductor manufacturing. We are observing that India wants to become a hub of semiconductor manufacturing, and that's why India is giving incentives to many of the private sector individuals. So here we'll understand what are India's ambitions with respect to semiconductor manufacturing. The third article mentioned on page number 3 of Indian Express, it talks about Delhi's air pollution. Recently, some experts have given their suggestions related to Delhi's winter action plan. So we'll understand those suggestions as well as why there is problem of air pollution with respect to Delhi. The next article mentioned on page number 12 of The Hindu, it talks about the regulation of misleading advertisements by the alternative medical sector, and Supreme Court is giving some guidelines trying to regulate this particular sector. The next article mentioned on page number 18 of The Hindu, it talks about Arighat submarine. Recently this submarine has been commissioned in Indian Navy. So we'll understand the importance of this particular submarine. After this, we'll also discuss some practice questions so that you will have a good idea about what kind of questions can be expected in the examination. So let's get started. The first article is about state election commissions. We are observing a trend in the state governments that they are trying to reduce the power of state election commissions. And if in a country, election commission cannot operate independently, then it is not a good sign for the democracy of that country. Now, if you look at the syllabus, this can be asked in prelims as well as mains. Mains GS paper 2 talks about constitution, its amendments, its features, and any constitutional body will be very important. And election commission is a constitutional body. You can look at this previous year question. It says, discuss the role of Election Commission of India in the light of the evolution of Model Code of Conduct, which has been asked for 15 marks. And to answer such questions, you need to have a comprehensive understanding of powers of Election Commission as well as the role it has played. Now moving forward, what is the context? See, we have a body called Election Commission of India at the national level. This body was brought in the year 1950 when we brought our constitution, and it said that if we are taking up elections for the parliament as well as state legislature, Election Commission of India will be responsible for taking up this election. And we had only 2 tiers of government, one government at the central level, another government at the state level. But after some years, that is after 1990s, we said that we are bringing third tier of government, and that is called local government. And this local government includes 2 types. First one for the urban area, that is municipality, and second one for village areas, that is called village panchayats. So we have this third kind of government, and for the elections which will be carried out for this local government, we brought a new constitutional body, and that body is named as State Election Commissions. Okay. Now, if State Election Commission wants to take up a local election, they need support of the state government too. But if state governments start creating some kind of obstacles, the elections cannot take place. So this is the issue. Recently, we are observing that many state governments are delaying the local elections. This is why we are saying the power of State Election Commission is decreasing or is getting reduced. Now, first of all, look at the provision, constitutional provision and the power of State Election Commission. We created this body with 73rd and 74th amendment in the year 1993. We brought the amendment in the articles saying article 243K and 243ZA. And we said that if you are conducting any election for municipalities or panchayats, it will be overseen by State Election Commission. Now here we expected that this body will become an independent body similar to Election Commission of India. When we look at Election Commission of India, it seems a very independent and autonomous body, and elections should take place in an independent manner. If elections are not taking up in independent manner, then democracy cannot survive in any country. It will turn out into a totalitarian regime or a dictatorship kind of a thing. So we said that for state level also, for local government also, we will have independent body called SEC. Now, it has a key role to play in the grassroots democracy. Now, what do we mean by grassroots democracy? Just like grasses have roots at the lower end, we want democracy to reach to this lower end, wherein we are saying that if there is a person living in a village and he has some kind of problem, we are building a road for that person in that village. In that case, we should take permission from that person. That person should have some say in the decision making. So we want democracy. When we say democracy, it is the power lying with the people. And if the power lies at the ordinary level, at the local level, that is grassroots democracy. And only when we carry out local elections in the right manner, then only we can say grassroots democracy will flourish in India. So, State Election Commission has a big role to play in this. Moving forward, look at this constitutional provision. We talked about Article 243K. It mentions about Panchayat elections. So, it says that the supervision, the direction and the control of the elections at Panchayat level will be there with the State Election Commission. And second, Article 243ZA, it is related to municipalities. So, any election at the municipalities or municipal corporation will be supervisioned or directed by State Election Commission. Moving forward, what are the challenges? This is the core issue now we are going to discuss. We are observing a systemic disempowerment of State Election Commission by the state governments. What happens is that the state government has some power with it, and local government also needs some kind of power, and state government do not want to share their power with the local government. So what they try to do? They try to ensure that the elections at this local level do not take place. They try to postpone the elections. If elections will not take place, no one will come here and they do not need to share their power with the local people. So what they are trying to do is that they are creating obstacles in the local elections. We can take the example of Karnataka. We are observing a legal battle for Karnataka wherein High Court said that Karnataka government should ensure that the local elections take place as soon as possible. But they did not do that, after which the State Election Commission of Karnataka went on to the High Court saying that we want a contempt petition to take place and you should take action against Karnataka government. Then also we have seen the same case in Andhra Pradesh earlier, wherein government tried to postpone local elections, and again there emerged a legal dispute between State Election Commission and the state government. So this entire scene shows that the government at the state level is trying to disempower this constitutional body, and this has a broader impact. First of all, we have a principle of decentralization in India where we say that we are going to give the power to the local level, and this principle itself gets compromised because of the action of state governments. Apart from that, we also have this participatory governance. We say that whenever we are carrying out governance, people should participate, and where people will participate, that is possible at the Gram Sabha, at the local level or at the municipality. And if elections do not take place, then how will this particular organ work? Then as a result, what we observed is that in the 70% of the local governments, they do not even have elected councils. When CAG was taking up the audit, they observed that 70% of the local governments do not even have these councils available. So that's a concerning phenomena. And if such thing continues, what about the accountability? If a person living in a village has some kind of a problem, where should he go? Who will be accountable? Neither the state government nor the central government. The local government should be responsible, but there is no government at all. So this is a broader issue. Now moving forward, there is another issue called inconsistent empowerment across the states. What do I mean by that? See, there should be State Election Commission in each state or union territory, and it should have powers throughout the country. That means in every state, the State Election Commission should have its power, which are very similar to the powers of State Election Commission of the other state. But this is not the case in India. If you look at this Janagraha's annual survey of India's city systems 2023 report. It said that out of total 32 states and union territories, only 11 have given powers of delimitation, ward delimitation to the State Election Commission. That means in India, one state has different power set for the State Election Commission and the other state has a different one. And this is not a good thing. Now moving forward, what kind of reforms we can take? First of all, we can bring State Election Commission at par with the Election Commission of India. Just like Election Commission of India is very independent, we can ensure SEC also becomes independent. That we can do by ensuring a transparent appointment mechanism for the State Election Commission, because those who are getting into this body are appointed in transparent manner, then the role of state government gets reduced. Second, we can amend the constitution, specifically the 74th constitutional amendment, and say that whenever we are delimiting the ward, we must have a specific fixed timeline and we must ensure that this should be done by the State Election Commission only. We can reduce the role of state government in this. Rather, we can ensure that there is a timeline of 10 years. Every 10 years, you should carry out the delimitation. Such mechanism can be brought in. Also, we can say that the exclusive power of carrying out this delimitation or even the reservation at local level, everything should be done only by the State Election Commission. So you can say by constitution, we can make it an exclusive body, and then we can say SEC can operate in a very independent manner. So if we implement all these reforms, eventually we can say that India will have a really good decentralized democracy in which we have transparency, we have accountability, and we have responsive government. So the next article is about semiconductor manufacturing facility that is getting developed in India. We have observed that Government of India is very much serious about developing a manufacturing facility for semiconductors. And we need to know what are semiconductors, why government is so much interested in this. If you look at the syllabus, this can be asked in prelims as well as mains. You can look at this previous year question. It says, discuss the multi-dimensional implications of uneven distribution of mineral oil in the world. And this is important because instead of mineral oil, you can be asked about semiconductors. They too have uneven distribution in the world. So you can expect such question in the exam. Now moving forward, what is the context? Government has said that we have an incentive plan of $15 billion and we are going to invest that. We want other private sector members to come forward for building the manufacturing facility for semiconductors. That means right now we just import. Whenever we need any kind of semiconductor, we import it from other countries. This is not a good sign for a country who wants to become Atmanirbhar. Now, first of all, what do we mean by semiconductors? First, we have conductors. Anything that can conduct electricity is termed as conductor. So, if we have copper, let's say, copper can send electricity from this side to that side. So, it is called conductor because it can conduct electricity. Then we have another thing called insulator. Insulator is something which will not pass on electricity from one side to another. So if we have plastic or rubber or glass, if we take that and if we try to send electricity from this side, it will not send it. So that means they are not good conductors of electricity. That's why we call them insulators. So conductor and insulator, two different things. Now we have third thing which is in between these two things, and that is semiconductor. We are calling it semi. Semiconductor means half conductor. It acts in such a manner that we humans can decide when this semiconductor will pass on electricity and when it will act as an insulator. It can act like conductor as well as insulator, but the condition depends on us. We will decide. That is why these semiconductors are very important for our modern electronics. If you look at mobile phone, computers, even missiles, satellites, everywhere we are using these semiconductors. Now, what are the reasons behind the Government of India's action of going towards domestic manufacturing of semiconductors? First of all, the semiconductor is going to play a key role in the fourth industrial revolution. When we say industrial revolution, what does this mean? That industries completely change, and that phenomena is industrial revolution. For example, before internet, industries used to operate in a different manner. After internet, they completely changed. So the first industrial revolution was brought by steam engine. The second one was brought by electricity. The third one was brought by computers and internet. And the fourth one, which we are observing right now, it is being brought by artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics, etc. So, if we look at these things, if we look at this fourth industrial revolution, the semiconductors are anyway core part of it. You cannot run artificial intelligence and robotics without semiconductors. And if you look at first three revolutions, in that India could not play a key role. Why? Because earlier either India was colonized by Britain or India was a poor country. But now India is capable of playing a key role in the fourth industrial revolution. That's why we should manufacture semiconductors in India. Second, there is geopolitical significance. If you look at this thing, that when it comes to semiconductors, the reserves of semiconductors are available with China. And if you look at the semiconductor manufacturing facility, it is available with Taiwan and South Korea. They are the dominating players. We say that Taiwan is the best player in the market when it comes to manufacturing of semiconductors. Now, what is the issue? We have geopolitical conflict with China. China has geopolitical conflict with USA. And we all know that China wants to take over Taiwan. If China takes over Taiwan, who will provide semiconductors to India? We are also dependent on Taiwan. So here, this geopolitical angle also leads us to domestically manufacture semiconductors. Then we do not want our dependency to be there on any other country. We don't want to depend on China or USA for the reserves of these semiconductors. Then there is a strategic security angle. If India wants to develop its defense sector, India wants better satellites, so we must have semiconductors available with us. If we remain dependent on China or any other country, and if they deny us semiconductors, how are we going to ensure our national security? And at last, there is angle of economic growth. If we bring the manufacturing facility, the jobs for high-skilled workers will be there, there will be innovation, and other industries will also get some kind of boost. So all of these are leading the government of India to go for this action. Now, there are some challenges for the government of India. First of all, there is a requirement of high capital. If you want to set up semiconductor manufacturing facility, you will have to put a lot of investment in it. And the problem is that there is long gestation period. What does this mean? If today I put some amount, that some amount will be a very high amount. As an investor, if I put that amount, this particular facility will get developed in next 3 to 5 years. That means after 5 years, it will start producing things. So I will wait for next 5 years for the production to start. Usually investors do not like such thing. They want return on their investment as soon as possible. So investors usually do not like to put money in the semiconductor manufacturing. Then there are technical complexities. You see, when I say semiconductor manufacturing, you can imagine a chip, a small chip on which many complicated things are already there. So such chips are developed in such a manner that it requires sophisticated processes, a very ultra clean environment, and the engineers who will be working on it, they will be highly skilled personnel. And if you want all of this, you will have to put more money. The operational cost will be very high, and continuously you have to put money. The investment will continue. What happens is that the technology keeps on changing. So if the technology is changing and you are building a facility which requires 3 to 5 years, that means you will have to consistently put your money or invest money in those technological advancements too. Then there is this role of global dominance. Right now we said that there are few countries who are dominating in this sector. For example, you can talk about USA, China, you can talk about Taiwan or even South Korea. So these countries will not like India to become a good global player. So these countries will say that there are some intellectual property rights, and for that will not India to take this technology directly. So there will be many such challenges. Now, what government can do? First of all, government can provide financial support to the private sector. How? First of all, government can bring this design linked incentive scheme or production linked incentive scheme. if there is a private company who says that we will design the semiconductor manufacturing related things, then government should provide some kind of subsidy. Or if someone is saying we will produce it, then government can give some subsidy. And this government is doing right now. And this can be provided to the private sector from India as well as private sector from any other country. So you can bring foreign investment in India for the same. Then second thing what you can do is you can focus on ecosystem development. If government of India thinks about bringing the complete ecosystem of semiconductors, so the small parts related to it and even the high-tech technologies, everything is being done in India itself. That's a good thing to do. Then India can go for cluster-based development. So you must have heard about Silicon Valley in United States of America. Even the Bangalore city of India is considered as Silicon Valley of India. What does this mean? It is a cluster. Cluster is something where the related industries are operating from the same location. So the entire industry will develop and grow in an exponential manner. Then you have foreign investment promotion. So government many a times goes for many events like this Semicon India, and sometimes government goes for partnership with foreign companies. So this is a good step to take. After that, government can go for skill development. So we have seen government took this smart power skill development program. So government can do that. The engineers we have, we can upskill these engineers to work on semiconductor manufacturing facilities. All of these steps, if India takes, in that case, we can say we will become self-reliant in the semiconductor manufacturing. And one day, even India can become the hub of semiconductor manufacturing. The next article is about the issue of air pollution in Delhi. Every year in the winters, we observe that Delhi faces severe air pollution issue. So, recently some experts have given their suggestions related to the winter action plan for Delhi. So, we need to understand that in detail. From the syllabus perspective, this can be asked in prelims as well as mains. Mains GS paper 3 mentions about environmental pollution and degradation. So, the topic is very important. And if you look at this previous year question, it says climate change is a global problem. How India will be affected by climate change? How Himalayan and coastal states of India will be affected by climate change? So instead of climate change, the question can be asked on air pollution directly. Now moving forward, what is the reason behind Delhi's air pollution in the winters? The first reason is the stubble burning that takes place in the region of Punjab and Haryana. See, the farmers in Punjab and Haryana, when they harvest wheat or rice, after harvesting, some straws will be left over there. Those straws are called stubble. And usually farmers burn those straws. And this burning, this is called stubble burning. Now, when you burn this, it will generate some kind of smoke, some kind of pollutants. Now, these are generated in Punjab and Haryana. But what happens is that there is a northwesterly wind which gets directed from Punjab and Haryana towards Delhi. So the same air full of smoke and pollutant comes to Delhi. Now after this, there is another phenomena which occurs in winter which we call as temperature inversion. Generally what happens is that on the surface of the earth, if you look at the atmosphere, the first layer of atmosphere is troposphere. So in the troposphere, what we see, the lower end will have high temperature. And as you go upwards, the temperature will decrease. So for example, if you go to mountains, you will see that the temperature is low. Why? Because the temperature is decreasing as you go to higher altitudes. Now in the winters, this new phenomena comes into picture, wherein the temperature near to the surface of the earth, it will become low and the temperature above will be relatively higher. Now this is the temperature inversion. It has inverted completely. Now due to this, what happens is that if there are some pollutants in the atmosphere, they get trapped. They will not be removed. And because of this, in Delhi, we see the pollutants further get concentrated in the same region. Moving forward, the Delhi has dry and still air, because of which the same pollutants remain there. They will not go to some other place because the air is very much still. It is not moving forward to another location. Then there is issue of vehicular pollution. If you look at Delhi, there are so many vehicles in Delhi and each vehicle will come up with some kind of pollutants. and there are so many industries around Delhi, in Delhi also and around Delhi also. And these industries will also give some kind of pollution. They will also emit some pollutants. Then there are some additional sources in the winters. For example, there are some dust storms. Then there is Diwali as a seasonal festival we have. And in the Diwali, we burn these firecrackers. And this also leads to more air pollution at that particular time. Also, there is biomass burning. Then people sometimes, to get the heating, they burn the firewoods. That further exacerbates this particular issue. Now, as this problem occurs every year, the government of Delhi brought this winter action plan in which they take multiple actions. For example, if the pollution level increases to a very severe level, in that case, they bring this odd even scheme. Then they even stop these industrial activities in the Delhi region. So such multiple actions are taken up. Now, some experts have given some additional advices to the government. They're saying you can go for artificial raining. See, we have now the technology available with us wherein we can bring rain for a temporary period artificially. If rain occurs, what will happen? The pollutants will come down for a temporary period. So for a short-term solution, we can go for artificial rain. Then second, you can promote work from home culture. If people will remain at their home, less people will come out. So less vehicles will come out. So there will be less pollution. Then there can be some behavioral change in people. If people start using public transport like metros instead of their personal vehicles, we will observe reduction in the air pollution. Then we can tweak the office hours. We see that the office hours are more or less same in any city of India, that is somewhere around 9 to 6. And on the same hours, we observe there is very heavy traffic, due to which you also observe very heavy air pollution at the same time. So if we change the office hours, we can solve this issue to some extent. Then it is said that you can use the CSR fund, the Corporate Social Responsibility Fund, to provide heater to people. See, in the winters, what people will go for, they will burn the firewood, and that will also generate some kind of pollution. So instead, if you provide some money to people to buy these heater facilities, then they will not go for this polluting activity. And then you can train farmers of Punjab and Haryana that instead of going for stubble burning, you should go for some other mechanism. So there are some mechanical devices which can be used to reduce or to remove these stubbles. After that, we can also think about some cleaner fuels. So you can go for biofuels and you can go for even electric vehicles so that you can reduce these emissions. So the next article is about misleading advertisements on medicines. Recently, Supreme Court has criticized Ministry of Ayush for not regulating the alternative medicine sector properly, because of which there are many companies who are putting some misleading advertisements on their medicines. So this topic becomes important for us to understand regulating mechanism that exist in India related to this misleading advertisements. If you look at the syllabus, this is important for prelims as well as mains. Mains GS paper 2 mentions about health sector. So topic becomes important. Now look at this previous year question. It says the Food Safety and Standards Act 2006 replaced the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954. Second, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India is under the charge of Director General of Health Services in the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So it's a highly factual question. So you may expect such questions. Now moving forward, what is the exact case? So first of all, we have a alternate medicine sector. The medicines that you conventionally take from the pharmaceutical sector or the chemist or druggist, these are your conventional or allopathic medicines. Apart from these allopathic medicines, we also have some different medicines. For example, you have Ayurveda, naturopathy, yoga, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy. And for these medicines, for the regulation of these medicines, we also have a special ministry, that is Ministry of Ayush. Now recently, Supreme Court has observed that there are many companies who are running false claims on their medicines, saying that this medicine can cure this particular disease, and in reality it cannot. So in that case, this Ministry of Ayush should have taken some actions against those companies, but it has not done that, and that is why Supreme Court has recently criticized this particular ministry. Now moving ahead, what the Supreme Court specifically said. First of all, it said that those companies should first of all apologize publicly for making such false claims, and the name of Patanjali has been in news recently because of the same issue. Secondly, court said that the enforcement agencies which are at the state level and at the central level, both should enforce the quality control in a strict manner. Third thing the court said is that what Ministry of Ayush has done is they have tried to bypass the rules that are already existing. See, in India, if you are making any kind of misleading claim on the advertisement of any medicine, there are some rules, there are some laws which already mention that you will be penalized. And Ministry of Ayush actually tried to bypass these rules, and that's why Supreme Court criticized it. Now moving forward, what are the drug regulation things available in India? First of all, we have Drugs and Cosmetic Act of 1940 and there are rules of 1945. They say that we have central regulators and state regulators and we provide the responsibility on these regulators. Second, there is this authority called Central Drugs Standard Control Organization under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And this authority is responsible for many things. For example, they will take the clinical trials, they will do the approval of drugs, they will set the standards for the drugs. All of this will be done by this particular agency. The head of this agency will be named as Drugs Controller General of India. And this person or this authority will be responsible for giving license to the drugs. They will also set standards for the manufacturing, sale, import, etc. So these agencies are very much important. Now moving forward, we have some particular laws related to misleading advertisements also. So first of all, we have Consumer Protection Act of 2019. This act says that we have an authority, Central Consumer Protection Authority at the national level. This authority will regulate if there is any kind of misleading advertisement on any kind of consumer product. Then they can also put some kind of fines. For example, if you are the first time offender, in that case 1 million rupees could be a fine. And in case you are doing this for repeated times, then fine up to 5 million rupees can be imposed on that company. Apart from that, we also have Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, in short FSSAI. This you must have heard. So this one will take care of food products. If there is any food product on which there is misleading advertisement, FSSAI will take some kind of action against that company. The next article is about submarine Arighat. Recently, this submarine has been commissioned in the Indian Navy. And we need to understand what is a submarine, what is this Arighat and Arihant submarine, and why it is important for nuclear triad of India. If you look at the syllabus, Mains GS Paper 3 talks about achievements of Indians in science and tech and indigenization of technology. Now look at this previous year question. It says, which one of the following is the best description of INS Astradharini that was in the news recently? Amphibious warfare ship, nuclear powered submarine, torpedo launch and recovery vessel, and nuclear powered aircraft carrier. So it's a very easy question if you know the basics about that particular thing called INS Astradharini. Now look at this article. We are saying recently this submarine named INS Arighat has been commissioned in the Indian Navy. First of all, what is a submarine? So whenever we want to attack our enemy, we have different mechanisms available. For example, if army is operating on the land, they will have tanks, they will have missile system available. Then we have Air Force and they will have some kind of aircrafts. And then we have our Navy who will be using either ships or submarines. Ships usually operate on the surface of the sea. So there is a sea, on the surface there will be a ship. But if you look at the underwater phenomena, there operates this kind of a submarine. This submarine will be there underwater for a very long duration. And how much time it will be there, it depends on the type of that submarine. There are two types of submarine. One is diesel engined or diesel powered submarine. So there will be diesel just like we have diesel in our cars. And there is another one which is nuclear powered submarine. In this submarine, there will be nuclear technology. That means just like we have nuclear power plants where we generate electricity, Similarly, in a submarine, we will have a small nuclear power plant kind of a thing where nuclear reaction will take place and energy will be generated. So this makes it very important because as compared to diesel engine, this nuclear powered submarine can remain underwater for a very long duration. So it's a very good one. Okay. Now, as far as INS Arigat is concerned, it is second nuclear powered ballistic missile submarine. The first one was INS Arihant, which was commissioned in the year 2016. So this is second one and we call it ballistic missile submarine. Now what does it mean by ballistic missile? So see, missiles has two types. One is cruise missile, another one is ballistic missile. If you have your enemy very near to you, then you can send your missile from here to this particular place directly. Here you will use cruise missile. But if you have an enemy which is at a longer distance, let's say China wants to attack USA. In that case, the distance is very long. So here they cannot use cruise missile because in the missile, the fuel will get exhausted by the time it reaches USA. So when we use the ballistic missile, there is a ballistic path. The missile goes upwards and it uses all its fuel. As soon as it reaches to this particular spot, when its fuel gets completely exhausted, then it continues its journey because of gravity. So this missile will be called as ballistic missile and this path is called as ballistic path. Now as far as INS Arigat is concerned, first of all it is nuclear powered and second it has capability to send ballistic missiles to the enemies. So it's a very good submarine we can say. Okay. Now we are seeing that it is strengthening India's nuclear triad. So what do we mean by nuclear triad? See, India is one of those elite countries who has nuclear weapons. And even if you have nuclear weapons, let's say a scenario happens in which China or any other country attacks India in such a manner that entire India is destroyed in one go. In that case, how are you going to attack back on the China or any other country? So for that, you need nuclear triad. Nuclear triad means you have the capacity to send nuclear weapons from three different ways. One is your army will send from the land part, then your air force can send through air, and third, you will have submarines in which nuclear weapons are already there and they can attack the country anytime. When you build such kind of triad, then you can say that you are a nuclear weapon country whose deterrence is very higher than any other country. So here on the land based we have different missiles, for example Agni missile and Prithvi missiles in which we can put nuclear weapons. Then for the air based we have BrahMos missile, and for the sea based now we have two submarines. One is INS Arihant and the next one is this INS Arigat. Both of these are very important and we are saying that our nuclear triad has got completed and has got strengthened now. Now, if you look at Arigat as compared to Arihant, we can say there are some technological upgradations and technological advancements. So if there will be any third kind of submarine in the same series, it will be an upgradation of this Arigat, INS Arigat. Okay, and there are some indigenous developments too. When we were building this INS Arigat, the design part, the manufacturing of some components, everything was done indigenously. That means in India itself. So it's a good news for Indians. Now we'll discuss some practice questions. Question number 1. What is the primary reason semiconductors are crucial in modern electronics? They are abundant and inexpensive. They can operate as both conductors and insulators under different conditions. This is the right answer. They completely block or allow the flow of electricity depending on their structure? No. They are the best conductors of electricity? No. They are expensive, obviously. They are not inexpensive. This is also wrong. So only B is the right answer. Question number 2. Consider the following statements regarding drug regulation in India. First, Central Drugs Standard Control Organization is responsible for setting advertising guidelines for all consumer products including food and cosmetics. Now this all makes this statement very extreme and the statement is wrong. Second, the Drugs Controller General of India is responsible for licensing blood products, vaccines and setting standards for drug manufacturing in India. Obviously, this Drug Controller General of India is the head of Central Drug Standard Control Organization, and this task is done by this particular authority. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 does not cover regulations related to misleading advertisements for drugs and cosmetics. Wrong statement, it covers. So only 2, that is C is the right answer. Then question number 3. With reference to India's nuclear triad, consider the following statements. Number 1, INS Arighat is the first nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine commissioned by India. Wrong. There is INS Arihant also. The Agni 5 missile is part of India's air-based nuclear delivery system. Wrong. It is not part of air-based, it is land-based. Third, India's nuclear triad allows the delivery of nuclear weapons from land, air, and sea-based platforms, and this is what we call as nuclear triad. So third statement is right. So option B is the right answer. Question number 4. Which of the following are part of India's sea-based nuclear delivery system? BrahMos? No, it is not sea-based. INS Arighat? Yes, it is. It is part of this. It is the submarine. Then Prithvi series? No. So only 2, that is B is the right answer. Then fifth question. In which of the following ways is temperature inversion responsible for Delhi's air pollution in winters? It leads to rise in vehicular and industrial emissions? No, it has nothing to do with this. Second, it enhances the dispersion of pollutants from stubble burning? No, not at all related. Third, it traps pollutants close to the ground, preventing their dispersion. This is the right answer. Because of temperature inversion, these pollutants get trapped. This is what we discussed. And fourth, it alters wind patterns, bringing more pollutants from distant sources? Not at all. So only C is the right answer. Then we have this mains practice question. It says, examine the factors leading to the disempowerment of state election commissions in India and suggest reforms to enhance their role in upholding grassroots democracy. So 2 dimensions are asked. Factors responsible, and you have to suggest the reforms. So the answer should include these 2 parts. Now while introducing, either you can start with state election commissions, or you can start with the grassroots democracy and its importance. So start with this, then in the body part, talk about the challenges leading to disempowerment. So you can discuss about the role of state government, how they are dealing the elections and reducing the power of state election commissions. You can take the example of Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh, you can mention about it. Then talk about the implications this will have on the grassroots democracy, that there will not be accountability, or the local governance or the public services will not be provided in the right manner. And then you provide some reforms. All these reforms we already discussed. How we can make some kind of amendments in the constitution, how we can give exclusive power to the State Election Commission and make it at par with Election Commission of India, an independent body. So if we do all these things, then we can say that SEC can perform in the right manner. It can become an independent institution, and because of institutions, we will see our democracy actually flourishing. So this is how we can conclude. Okay. Now after this, if you want more updates, more such videos, please like, share and subscribe to the YouTube channel of Narayana IAS Academy. Thank you so much.